embargo, and then a couple of years later it became official. President Kennedy signed the embargo against Cuba. And some of the effects that the embargo had on Cuba is a lot of economic damage, because Cuba relied heavily on the United States economically, and more than $1 trillion over all the years. And after Cuba signed an agreement with the Soviet Union, they began to rely heavily on them. This is a photo with Fidel Castro and the leader of the Soviet Union at point. And in 1972, Cuba joined Comecon, which is a group of socialist states or socialist countries in Western Europe. And then they relied heavily on them economically until 1991. Comecon collapsed, and Cuba's economy plummeted a lot. They were suffering, and they went into a period known as the special period in time and space, or el periodo especial en tiempo de paz. And right now, it is still not legal for Americans to travel to Cuba as tourists, but there are 12 reasons in which Americans are allowed, and they are family visits, government visits, professional research meetings, educational religious activities, public performances, clinics, workshops, support for the Cuban people, humanitarian projects, and there are a few more, exploitation of material. And so then one of my other important points was what is going on with the embargo today, and that's another reason I chose it, is because it was always in the news and I was hearing about the embargo, so I wanted to learn more about it. And, well, the United States, they're represented in Cuba by the U.S. interest sections and in Cuba, and they work with a building here in D.C. And also the Department of State, they created a list of these services and products that are available for trade from the Cuban private sector. And also American companies will soon, they'll be most likely be entering Cuba and dealing with the Cuban economy there. And another fact is when you go to Cuba, you can only bring $400 back in goods, and only $100 can be alcohol or tobacco. And recently, as I learned in the news, Obama started like in December, he started to change and open up lower the restrictions between both countries and ease the embargo. And like also, this is from April, Obama took Cuba off the list of international terrorism, which was really big for the relationship between both countries. And here on April 11, 2015, President Obama and Raul Castro shook hands at the Cumbre de las Americas, and that was the first time Cuba had been invited for many years. And these are some articles that, like, in September, there are going to be flights to Cuba from Baltimore Airport, and there's going to be a ferry from Key West, Florida, to Cuba. In my opinion, is that I agree with what Obama's doing now, and I guess what the French president's doing. That they agree that getting rid of the embargo is the right thing to do, and so I think Obama just has to keep doing what he's doing. And hopefully Congress will vote to get rid of the embargo, because it was signed into law that only Congress can end an embargo, so Obama has to wait for Congress to do that.
What you would say to the Cuban American who living in Florida and strongly opposed to that? What would you say yourself to try to change their mind?
Well, yeah, a person like that was Marco Rubio, who's who's very against it. It's maybe, I don't know, they think that if you were to end the embargo, you'd be supporting what Fidel Castro did throughout the many years that the embargo took place. So I think it's because they think that would like approve what Fidel Castro has done throughout the many years. So I guess that's why. But I don't agree with that.
Explain why this was important to you.
Yeah. And so for my plan of action, there wasn't that much to do, but I wrote a letter to Obama, and it's in that envelope. I'm going to send it to him today.
14.
Later today, and hopefully he'll respond.
Maybe you will get some I mean, respond sometimes.
Yeah. And I was just talking about what I've learned through the embargo and that I agree with what he's doing. And here's some other photos. That's Fidel Castro on the cover of Time magazine in 1959 when he became the leader of Cuba. And this is Fidel Castro and Nelson Mandela. That was kind of recent. And yeah, this is my bibliography.
That is a great work.
Good
Great
job,
job,
man.
Alexander.